Question 1. The efficiency study reveals that the automated provisioning of virtual machines using VMware vRealize automation is experiencing significant delays, impacting deployment timelines. The investigation has pinpointed potential issues within the VRA appliance's resource utilization and its interaction with the underlying vCenter server. What is the most professional and effective approach to diagnose and resolve this performance bottleneck? Option A. Immediately revert the VRA appliance to a previous stable configuration and monitor performance without further investigation, assuming the issue is due to recent configuration changes. Option B. Arbitrarily increase the CPU and memory resources allocated to the VRA appliance and its associated services, then observe if the provisioning times improve. Option C. Disregard the efficiency study's findings, as the current provisioning process has been in place for a considerable time and has not previously been flagged as a critical issue. Option D. Conduct a thorough analysis of VRA appliance logs, vCenter server performance metrics, and network latency between components, correlating findings to identify the root cause before implementing any changes. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough analysis of VRA appliance logs, vCenter server performance metrics, and network latency between components, correlating findings to identify the root cause before implementing any changes. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a significant bottleneck in the automated provisioning of virtual machines within the VMware vRealize automation (VRA) environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts service delivery timelines, resource utilization, and potentially customer satisfaction, all of which are critical metrics for cloud management operations. The pressure to resolve this bottleneck quickly must be balanced against the need to implement a sustainable and compliant solution. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation aligned with established ITIL and VMware best practices for troubleshooting and change management. This involves detailed log analysis, performance metric correlation, and a phased testing methodology. By identifying the root cause through empirical evidence and implementing changes in a controlled manner, it minimizes the risk of introducing new issues or violating operational policies. This aligns with the principle of responsible IT operations, ensuring that changes are well understood, tested, and documented, thereby maintaining the integrity and stability of the cloud environment. An incorrect approach that involves immediately reverting to a previous, known good configuration without understanding the root cause is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the diagnostic process, failing to address the underlying issue which may resurface or evolve. It also violates change management principles by not documenting the problem or the resolution, hindering future troubleshooting and knowledge transfer. Furthermore, it could mask underlying infrastructure degradation or configuration drift that needs attention. Another incorrect approach, such as arbitrarily increasing resource allocation to the VRA components without evidence, is also professionally unsound. This is a shotgun approach that wastes resources and does not guarantee a resolution. It can lead to over-provisioning, increased costs, and can mask the true problem, making future diagnosis more difficult. It demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and adherence to efficient resource management. A third incorrect approach, which is to ignore the findings of the efficiency study and continue with existing workflows, is the most egregious failure. This demonstrates a disregard for operational improvement, efficiency, and potentially for the underlying stability of the system. It can lead to continued performance degradation, increased operational costs, and a failure to meet service-level objectives, ultimately impacting the business. This approach shows a lack of proactive management and a failure to uphold professional responsibility for maintaining a high-performing cloud environment. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and prioritizing the reported issue. 2. Initiating a structured diagnostic process using available tools and logs. 3. Formulating hypotheses based on observed data. 4. Designing and executing controlled tests to validate hypotheses. 5. Implementing solutions in a phased and documented manner with rollback plans. 6. Verifying the resolution and documenting lessons learned. This systematic approach ensures that solutions are effective, efficient, and maintain the integrity of the cloud management platform. Question 2. Examination of the data shows a critical need to automate the provisioning of virtual machines and associated services within a VMware vRealize automation, area automation, environment. The primary objective is to accelerate deployment times while ensuring that all provisioned resources adhere to strict security policies and regulatory compliance standards. Several potential approaches are being considered for implementing these automated deployments. Which of the following approaches best aligns with best practices for secure and compliant cloud automation within the specified regulatory framework? Option A. Implement security controls using external scripts that are executed after the resources have been provisioned, without direct integration into the blueprinting process. Option B. Define infrastructure and application configurations, including security policies and compliance checks, directly within VMware area automation blueprints, enabling automated validation before resource provisioning. Option C. Manually configure security settings and compliance controls on each virtual machine and service after they have been provisioned by the automation workflow. Option D. Temporarily disable security logging and auditing features during the automated deployment process to reduce overhead and speed up provisioning times. Correct answer is B. Define infrastructure and application configurations, including security policies and compliance checks, directly within VMware area automation blueprints, enabling automated validation before resource provisioning. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and resource provisioning with the imperative to maintain security and compliance. The pressure to deliver services quickly can lead to shortcuts that inadvertently expose the organization to risks. Evaluating different approaches requires a deep understanding of the VMware vRealize automation, now area automation, platform's capabilities, best practices for automation, and the underlying principles of secure cloud operations. The professional challenge lies in identifying the most robust and secure method for managing cloud resources, ensuring that automation does not compromise the integrity or compliance posture of the environment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes the use of infrastructure as code, ISC principles, specifically leveraging VMware area automation's blueprinting capabilities. Blueprints define the desired state of infrastructure and applications, including their configuration, security settings, and deployment parameters. By embedding security controls and compliance checks directly into blueprints, organizations ensure that every deployment adheres to predefined standards. This approach aligns with best practices for cloud automation by promoting repeatability, consistency, and auditability. It allows for automated validation of compliance requirements before resources are provisioned, significantly reducing the risk of configuration drift and security vulnerabilities. This proactive, codified approach is essential for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment at scale. Incorrect approaches analysis. Manually configuring security settings post-deployment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It introduces human error, inconsistency, and delays in achieving compliance. This reactive approach means that resources could be deployed in a non-compliant state for an extended period, increasing the attack surface and the likelihood of breaches. It also makes auditing and remediation far more complex and time-consuming. Implementing security controls solely through external scripting after resource provisioning, without integrating them into the automation workflow, is also problematic. While scripting can be a powerful tool, relying on it as an afterthought bypasses the inherent validation and consistency checks that ISC provides. This can lead to race conditions, incomplete configurations, and difficulty in managing the lifecycle of security controls. It also creates a disconnect between the infrastructure definition and its security posture, hindering effective governance. Disabling security logging and auditing to improve deployment speed is a direct violation of numerous regulatory frameworks and ethical obligations. Security logging and auditing are fundamental for detecting, investigating, and responding to security incidents. Compromising these capabilities not only exposes the organization to severe risks, but also constitutes a failure to meet compliance mandates that require comprehensive monitoring and reporting. This approach prioritizes expediency over accountability and security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive, security-by-design approach to cloud automation. This involves understanding the organization's security and compliance requirements and integrating them into the automation workflows from the outset. The decision-making process should prioritize solutions that offer inherent validation, consistency, and auditability. When evaluating automation strategies, professionals should ask: 1. Does this approach embed security and compliance into the provisioning process? 2. Is the approach repeatable and auditable? 3. Does it minimize the potential for human error and configuration drift? 4. Does it align with the organization's overall security governance and risk management framework? By consistently applying these questions, professionals can ensure that their automation initiatives enhance, rather than compromise, the security and compliance posture of the cloud environment. Question 3. Performance analysis shows that automated provisioning of virtual machines within the VMware vRealize automation environment is consistently completing faster than manual provisioning. However, a recent audit identified several instances where newly provisioned VMs lacked essential security hardening configurations and were not automatically enrolled in the central logging system, potentially exposing sensitive data and hindering incident response. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to best practices for cloud management and automation? Option A. Temporarily disable automated security checks in vRealize automation to expedite the provisioning process, with a plan to address security hardening in a subsequent, separate automation project. Option B. Focus solely on improving the performance metrics of the provisioning process, assuming that security and compliance will be addressed through separate, ad hoc security initiatives. Option C. Instruct the operations team to manually review the security configurations of all newly provisioned VMs on a weekly basis to identify and remediate any compliance gaps. Option D. Integrate automated security hardening scripts and compliance checks directly into the vRealize automation blueprint and workflow execution, ensuring these steps are mandatory before a VM is considered fully provisioned and accessible. The correct answer is D. Integrate automated security hardening scripts and compliance checks directly into the vRealize automation blueprint and workflow execution, ensuring these steps are mandatory before a VM is considered fully provisioned and accessible. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and resource provisioning with the imperative to maintain security and compliance. The core of the challenge lies in the potential for misconfigurations or unauthorized access when automation is implemented without robust governance and oversight. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that automated workflows adhere to established security policies and regulatory requirements, preventing data breaches or service disruptions. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and integrated security posture within the automation framework. By incorporating security checks and compliance validations directly into the CI/CD pipeline and the automation workflows, organizations can ensure that resources are provisioned and managed in a secure and compliant manner from the outset. This aligns with the principle of security by design and compliance by design, which are fundamental to responsible cloud operations. This approach represents best professional practice because it minimizes risk by embedding controls at the point of action, rather than relying on post-deployment audits, which are often reactive and less effective. It directly addresses the need to prevent unauthorized access and misconfigurations by making security and compliance non-negotiable steps in the automation process. Incorrect approaches fail to adequately address the inherent risks associated with automated cloud operations. One incorrect approach might involve relying solely on manual reviews of automation scripts and configurations after they have been deployed. This is professionally unacceptable because it is a reactive measure that allows potential vulnerabilities to exist in the production environment for a period, increasing the risk of exploitation. It fails to meet the standard of due diligence required in managing cloud resources, as it does not prevent the initial deployment of insecure configurations. Another incorrect approach could be to bypass security checks in the automation pipeline to speed up deployment times. This is a direct violation of professional ethics and best practices, as it prioritizes speed over security and compliance. Such an action could lead to significant regulatory penalties and reputational damage if a breach occurs due to the bypass controls. It demonstrates a failure to understand the critical importance of security and compliance in cloud environments. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment and mitigation throughout the entire lifecycle of cloud automation. This involves understanding the specific security and compliance requirements relevant to the organization's industry and data types, and then designing automation workflows that inherently enforce these requirements. Continuous monitoring and auditing of automated processes are also crucial to identify and address any deviations or emerging risks. The goal is to build trust in the automation by ensuring it operates within defined boundaries of security and compliance. Question 4. Analysis of a situation where a critical business application requires immediate deployment to meet a market opportunity, but the standard change management and security review process would delay deployment by several days. The IT team has the capability to deploy the application rapidly using automation tools, but this would bypass the usual multi-stage approval and testing. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Deploy the application rapidly using automation, relying on automated rollback mechanisms to revert if any issues arise. Option B. Deploy the application rapidly using automation, with a commitment to conduct a full review and implement any necessary fixes at a later, unspecified date. Option C. Adhere strictly to the established change management and security review process, communicating the business impact of the delay to stakeholders. Option D. Proceed with the rapid automated deployment, documenting the deviation and initiating an expedited post-deployment review and remediation process. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the rapid automated deployment, documenting the deviation and initiating an expedited post-deployment review and remediation process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, where a critical operational decision must be made under pressure, balancing immediate needs with long-term compliance and security. The challenge lies in the potential for a quick fix to introduce vulnerabilities or violate established governance policies, which could have significant repercussions. The need for rapid deployment of a new service conflicts with the established change management and security review processes. This tension requires a decision maker to weigh the business imperative against the risk of non-compliance and potential security breaches. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves adhering to the established change management and security review processes, even under time pressure. This aligns with best practices for IT governance and compliance, which are implicitly governed by the principles of responsible cloud management and automation. By following these established procedures, the organization ensures that the new service is assessed for security vulnerabilities, operational impact, and compliance with internal policies and any relevant external regulations. Though specific regulations are not detailed for this exam, the principle of due diligence applies. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing systemic issues and maintains the integrity of the cloud environment. It demonstrates a commitment to a secure and stable operational state, which is a cornerstone of professional cloud management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the new service without proper review or documentation bypasses essential security and governance controls. This creates a significant risk of introducing vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches or service disruptions. It also violates the principles of auditable change management, making it difficult to track the deployment and troubleshoot issues later. This approach demonstrates a disregard for established operational procedures and a failure to exercise due diligence, which are critical ethical and professional failings in IT management. Deploying the service with a later review strategy, while seemingly a compromise, still carries substantial risk. The immediate deployment without prior assessment means potential security flaws or compliance gaps are introduced into the production environment. The subsequent review might be rushed or incomplete due to ongoing operational demands, meaning the risks may not be adequately mitigated. This approach prioritizes speed over thoroughness, which is a direct contravention of responsible risk management principles inherent in cloud operations. Relying solely on automated rollback mechanisms without a pre-deployment review is also insufficient. While automation is a key aspect of cloud management, it is a reactive measure. It assumes that a problem will be detected and that the rollback will be successful. It does not proactively identify or prevent issues related to security misconfigurations, compliance violations, or unintended operational impacts that might not trigger an immediate rollback alert. This approach abdicates the responsibility for proactive risk assessment and mitigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals in cloud management and automation should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying the business requirement and its urgency. 2. Assessing the potential risks associated with different courses of action, including security, compliance, and operational risks. 3. Evaluating the available resources and established processes for addressing the requirement. 4. Selecting the approach that best balances the business need with the acceptable level of risk, prioritizing adherence to governance and security policies. 5. Documenting the decision and the rationale behind it, especially when deviating from standard procedures. In situations of conflict between speed and process, the professional's duty is to advocate for the approach that upholds the integrity and security of the managed environment, even if it requires more time. This involves clear communication with stakeholders about the risks and benefits of each option. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that a cloud management and automation team is experiencing a high rate of security vulnerabilities and compliance deviations in their production environments due to rapid deployment cycles. The team is considering several strategies to address this issue. Which of the following strategies best represents a professional and effective approach to improving security and compliance posture within the automation framework? Option A. Focus solely on developing new features and delegate all security and compliance validation to a separate, independent team that operates independently of the automation pipeline. Option B. Implement automated security scans and compliance checks directly within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that deployments fail if predefined security and compliance gates are not met. Option C. Conduct comprehensive manual security audits and compliance reviews only after all deployments have successfully reached the production environment. Option D. Establish a policy to bypass automated security checks for any deployment deemed urgent by project stakeholders. The correct answer is B. Implement automated security scans and compliance checks directly within the CI/CD pipeline, ensuring that deployments fail if predefined security and compliance gates are not met. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the desire for rapid deployment and feature velocity with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance postures. The pressure to deliver new services quickly can lead to shortcuts in validation and testing, potentially introducing vulnerabilities or non-compliance with established organizational policies or, if applicable, external regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks without unduly hindering innovation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and integrated strategy for security and compliance within the automation lifecycle. This involves embedding security checks and compliance validations directly into the CI/CD pipeline. By automating these checks, organizations ensure that every deployment adheres to predefined standards, significantly reducing the risk of introducing vulnerabilities or non-compliance. This aligns with best practices in DevSecOps, where security is a shared responsibility and is integrated from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. This approach fosters a culture of continuous improvement and risk mitigation, which is crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on post-deployment audits. This is reactive and inefficient. By the time a non-compliance or security issue is detected, it may have already caused damage, incurred significant remediation costs, or exposed sensitive data. This approach fails to prevent issues, making it a poor risk management strategy. Another incorrect approach is to bypass automated security checks for urgent deployments. While seemingly expediting delivery, this creates a significant security gap. It introduces a manual element of judgment that is prone to error and bias, and it undermines the integrity of the automated processes designed to protect the environment. This can lead to the introduction of critical vulnerabilities that may go unnoticed until a breach occurs. A third incorrect approach is to implement security and compliance checks only at the final stage of the deployment pipeline. This is inefficient as it requires significant rework if issues are found late in the process. It also increases the risk of human error during the manual review process, and it does not foster a culture of shared responsibility for security and compliance. Professional reasoning. professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing the integration of security and compliance into the earliest stages of the cloud management and automation lifecycle. This involves understanding the organization's specific security policies and any relevant regulatory frameworks. When evaluating automation strategies, professionals should ask, does this approach proactively identify and mitigate risks, or does it rely on reactive measures? The decision-making process should involve a thorough assessment of the potential impact of security and compliance failures, and the selection of tools and processes that embed these considerations into the core of automation workflows. Continuous monitoring and regular review of automated processes are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 6. Benchmark analysis indicates that a cloud management and automation team is under pressure to accelerate the deployment of new microservices. While the team has developed robust automated deployment pipelines, there is a debate regarding the extent of pre-deployment validation required for security and compliance checks, given the rapid iteration cycles. Which approach best balances the need for speed with the imperative of maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment? Option A. Conduct manual, ad hoc security and compliance checks only when major incidents occur or during infrequent scheduled audits. Option B. Focus exclusively on functional testing of microservices to ensure they operate as intended, deferring security and compliance considerations to a later stage. Option C. Implement automated security and compliance checks as integral components of the CI/CD pipeline, with failures blocking deployment until remediate. Option D. Prioritize rapid deployment of all services, relying solely on post-deployment security audits and incident response for compliance assurance. The correct answer is C. Implement automated security and compliance checks as integral components of the CI/CD pipeline, with failures blocking deployment until remediate. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the drive for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The pressure to deliver new services quickly can lead to shortcuts in the validation and testing phases, potentially introducing vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that violate established governance policies and regulatory requirements. The professional challenge lies in advocating for and implementing a rigorous, yet efficient, best practice evaluation process that satisfies both business objectives and compliance mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, iterative validation process that integrates security and compliance checks at multiple stages of the automation lifecycle. This aligns with the principles of DevSecOps and a shift-left security strategy, which are considered best practices in modern cloud environments. By embedding automated compliance checks and security scans within the CI/CD pipeline, potential issues are identified and remediated early, minimizing the risk of deploying non-compliant or insecure configurations. This proactive stance is crucial for adhering to the principles of continuous compliance and risk management, which are implicitly or explicitly required by various regulatory frameworks governing data protection and system integrity. The focus on automated testing and validation ensures consistency, repeatability, and auditability, all of which are critical for demonstrating compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes immediate deployment without comprehensive validation, relying solely on post-deployment audits, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This deploy first, audit later mentality creates a window of vulnerability and noncompliance, exposing the organization to potential data breaches, service disruptions, and regulatory penalties. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to implement adequate controls, which are fundamental ethical obligations for IT professionals. Another incorrect approach involves conducting manual, ad hoc security and compliance checks only when a major incident occurs or during infrequent scheduled audits. This reactive strategy is inefficient, prone to human error, and fails to address the dynamic nature of cloud environments. It neglects the principle of proactive risk management and continuous monitoring, which are essential for maintaining a secure and compliant posture. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold professional standards of care and diligence. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on functional testing without considering security and compliance implications, overlooks critical aspects of a holistic automation strategy. While functional correctness is important, it does not guarantee that the deployed services meet security baselines or regulatory requirements. This narrow focus can lead to the deployment of services that, while working as intended, are inherently insecure or non-compliant, creating significant risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates risk assessment, compliance requirements, and business objectives from the outset. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's operations and data. When evaluating automation strategies, the process should always include 1. Defining clear security and compliance requirements as part of the automation design. 2. Incorporating automated validation and testing for security and compliance within the CI/CD pipeline. 3. Establishing a feedback loop to continuously improve automation based on monitoring and audit results. 4. Prioritizing remediation of identified compliance gaps before or immediately after deployment. 5. Ensuring that all automation processes are documented and auditable. This systematic approach ensures that innovation and efficiency are pursued responsibly, with a strong foundation of security and compliance. Question 7. Research into the implementation of a new multi-cloud strategy reveals that a critical requirement is to ensure that all virtual machines deployed within the European Union (EU) region strictly adhere to GDPR data residency mandates, while VMs deployed in the United States (US) must comply with relevant US data protection laws. The automation team is tasked with configuring VMware vRealize Automation (VRA) to enforce these regional compliance policies during resource provisioning. Which approach best ensures consistent and verifiable compliance with these distinct jurisdictional requirements? Option A. Develop VRA blueprints that dynamically incorporate region-specific policies for data residency and security controls, ensuring that deployments in the EU region automatically include GDPR-compliant configurations, and deployments in the US region include US-specific security measures. Option B. Implement a manual review process after VM deployment to verify that resources in the EU region are indeed residing within the EU and that US-based VMs meet US data protection standards. Option C. Configure VRA to prioritize rapid VM deployment across all regions with a general security baseline applied and address specific regional compliance requirements through ad hoc scripting after provisioning. Option D. Utilize generic VRA blueprints for all deployments and rely on individual tenant administrators to manually configure region-specific compliance settings on each deployed VM. The correct answer is A. Develop VRA blueprints that dynamically incorporate region-specific policies for data residency and security controls, ensuring that deployments in the EU region automatically include GDPR-compliant configurations, and deployments in the US region include US-specific security measures. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in cloud management and automation, ensuring consistent and compliant deployment of resources across different environments. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment and agility with the imperative to adhere to organizational policies and regulatory requirements, particularly concerning data residency and security. Missteps can lead to compliance violation, security breaches, and operational inefficiencies. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, policy-driven deployment process. By leveraging VMware vRealize Automation, VRA blueprints that incorporate specific data residency and security controls, the organization ensures that all deployed resources automatically comply with the defined regulations. This proactive, automated enforcement of policies is crucial for maintaining compliance in a dynamic cloud environment. It aligns with the principle of security and compliance by design, embedding these considerations into the automation workflow itself, thereby minimizing human error and the risk of manual oversight. An incorrect approach that bypasses policy enforcement mechanisms in VRA, such as directly deploying VMs without using policy-aware blueprints, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypass creates a blind spot, making it impossible to guarantee that deployed resources meet data residency requirements or adhere to security standards. This directly contravenes the principles of responsible data handling and could lead to violations of data protection regulations, resulting in severe penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on speed of deployment without integrating compliance checks, demonstrates a failure to understand the broader implications of cloud automation. While speed is a benefit of automation, it must not come at the expense of security and compliance. This approach neglects the ethical obligation to protect sensitive data and adhere to legal frameworks governing its storage and processing. A third incorrect approach, relying on manual post-deployment checks for compliance, is also professionally unacceptable. This method is inherently inefficient, prone to errors, and reactive rather than proactive. It fails to establish a robust control environment and increases the likelihood of non-compliance going undetected for extended periods, which is a direct ethical and regulatory failing. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's data and operations. This understanding must then be translated into concrete policy requirements that can be automated. For implementing any automation solution, professionals should conduct a risk assessment to identify potential compliance gaps. The chosen automation tools and workflows should be designed to enforce these policies automatically, with mechanisms for auditing and reporting to ensure ongoing adherence. Regular review and updates of automation workflows are also essential to adapt to evolving regulations and business needs. Question 8. The assessment process reveals that a new development team is rapidly provisioning virtual machines and deploying applications using automated workflows within the VMware vRealize automation environment. While this accelerates development cycles, there is a growing concern that these automated deployments may not consistently adhere to the organization's established security baselines and industry-specific compliance mandates. Team is requesting guidance on how to ensure that all automated deployments are secure and compliant without significantly hindering their development velocity. Option A. Deploy all resources first and then conduct periodic security scans and compliance audits to identify and remediate any deviations from established standards. Option B. Prioritize the speed of automated deployments, assuming that security and compliance can be addressed as a separate post-deployment initiative. Option C. Implement security and compliance checks directly within the vRealize automation blueprints and workflows, ensuring that resources are provisioned only if they meet predefined policy requirements. Option D. Require manual approval for every automated deployment, adding a human review step to verify security and compliance before provisioning. The correct answer is C. Implement security and compliance checks directly within the vRealize automation blueprints and workflows, ensuring that resources are provisioned only if they meet predefined policy requirements. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and resource provisioning with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. In the context of the 2V0-631 exam, which focuses on VMware's cloud management and automation solutions, this scenario highlights the critical importance of understanding how to integrate security and compliance controls directly into the automation workflows. The professional challenge lies in preventing the creation of security vulnerabilities or compliance gaps through automated processes, which can be more insidious and widespread than manual errors. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it embeds security and compliance checks as integral components of the automation lifecycle. This proactive strategy, often referred to as shift-left security and compliance, ensures that policies are enforced at the point of creation or deployment, rather than as an afterthought. For VMware environments, this translates to leveraging vRealize automation, now area automation, capabilities to enforce blueprints that adhere to organizational security baselines and regulatory requirements. This aligns with the principles of secure cloud design and operational excellence, minimizing risk and ensuring auditability. An incorrect approach that involves deploying resources first and then attempting to remediate security or compliance issues post-deployment is professionally unacceptable. This reactive strategy is inefficient, costly, and significantly increases the organization's attack surface and exposure to regulatory penalties. It fails to uphold the principle of least privilege and can lead to unauthorized access or data breaches. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of foresight and a disregard for the foundational security and compliance requirements that should govern cloud infrastructure. Another incorrect approach, which is to manually review and approve every automated deployment, undermines the very purpose of automation. While some level of human oversight might be necessary for critical changes, relying on manual intervention for routine deployments negates the efficiency gains of automation and introduces human error. It also creates a bottleneck, hindering agility and responsiveness, and can lead to inconsistencies in policy enforcement. This approach fails to leverage the capabilities of the automation platform to enforce predefined policies consistently and at scale. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over adherence to security and compliance standards is fundamentally flawed. This short-sighted strategy can lead to severe consequences, including data breaches, reputational damage, and significant financial penalties. It demonstrates a failure to understand the interconnectedness of operational efficiency, security, and regulatory adherence, which are all critical pillars of effective cloud management. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a security and compliance by design philosophy. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization, translating those requirements into actionable policies within the cloud management platform, and integrating these policies into the automation workflows from the outset. Regular review and auditing of automated processes are also crucial to ensure ongoing adherence and to adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire to accelerate the deployment of new automated workflows for provisioning cloud resources. To ensure compliance and security, what is the most effective approach to managing the associated risks? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities of the proposed automation, defines mitigation strategies, and establishes continuous monitoring before deployment. Option B. Implement security controls only after a security incident related to automated provisioning is detected. Option C. Rely entirely on the default security configurations provided by the cloud service provider for the automated provisioning tools. Option D. Prioritize deployment speed above all else, deferring any formal risk evaluation until after the workflows are operational. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities of the proposed automation, defines mitigation strategies, and establishes continuous monitoring before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and feature iteration with robust security and compliance requirements. Stakeholders, driven by business objectives, often prioritize speed, which can lead to overlooking critical risk assessment steps. The challenge lies in effectively communicating the necessity of thorough risk assessment to stakeholders who may not fully grasp its implications or view it as a bottleneck. Failure to integrate risk assessment early and continuously can result in significant security vulnerabilities, compliance violations, and ultimately, reputational damage and financial penalties, especially within regulated industries. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively integrating a comprehensive risk assessment framework into the cloud management and automation lifecycle. This means identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with new services, automation scripts, and infrastructure changes before they are deployed. It requires defining acceptable risk levels, implementing appropriate mitigation strategies e.g. access controls, encryption, automated security checks, and establishing continuous monitoring mechanisms. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and security frameworks, which mandate a risk-based approach to technology adoption and management. By embedding risk assessment, organizations can ensure that security and compliance are not afterthoughts, but are foundational to their cloud operations, thereby protecting sensitive data and maintaining regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing security controls only after a security incident occurs represents a reactive and insufficient approach. This fails to meet the proactive requirements of modern risk management frameworks and can lead to significant breaches and regulatory penalties for negligence. It demonstrates a failure to anticipate and mitigate risks, which is a core ethical and professional responsibility. Focusing solely on the speed of deployment without any formal risk evaluation is a direct violation of due diligence principles. This approach disregards potential threats and vulnerabilities, exposing the organization to unacceptable levels of risk and potential noncompliance with data protection regulation. It prioritizes short-term business agility over long-term security and stability. Relying exclusively on vendor-provided security features without conducting an independent risk assessment is also problematic. While vendors offer security tools, the responsibility for understanding and mitigating risks within the specific deployment context remains with the organization. This approach outsources critical risk management functions and can lead to misconfigurations or overlooked vulnerabilities that are specific to the organization's unique environment and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals in cloud management and automation must adopt a proactive and integrated approach to risk assessment. This involves 1. Understanding the business context and objectives to identify how cloud adoption impacts risk posture. 2. Establishing a clear risk assessment methodology that is applied consistently throughout the lifecycle of cloud services and automation. 3. Collaborating with security, compliance, and business stakeholders to define acceptable risk tolerances. 4. Implementing a layered security strategy that includes technical controls, policy enforcement, and continuous monitoring. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating risk assessments as the cloud environment evolves and new threats emerge. This systematic process ensures that risks are identified, understood, and managed effectively, safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. Question 10. The review process indicates that a new cloud-based application is nearing its go-live date, but the risk assessment documentation is incomplete, with several critical security controls not yet evaluated for their effectiveness in the deployed environment. The project team is pushing to deploy the application to meet business objectives, suggesting that a full risk assessment can be completed post-deployment. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and mitigate potential risks? Option A. Proceed with the deployment as planned and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and implement necessary controls immediately after the application goes live. Option B. Delay the deployment until a thorough risk assessment is completed, all identified risks are mitigated, and the documentation is finalized and approved. Option C. Rely solely on the security certifications provided by the cloud service vendor for the underlying infrastructure, assuming that the application itself is secure. Option D. Conduct a limited, high-level risk assessment focusing only on the most obvious threats and proceed with deployment, deferring detailed analysis to a later date. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the deployment as planned and conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and implement necessary controls immediately after the application goes live. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with robust security and compliance requirements. The pressure to deliver new services quickly can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, potentially exposing the organization to significant vulnerabilities. The challenge lies in ensuring that risk assessment is not treated as a mere formality, but as an integral part of the development lifecycle, requiring proactive engagement and thorough documentation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating risk assessment into the early stages of the cloud service lifecycle and maintaining it as an ongoing process. This aligns with best practices for cloud security and compliance, which emphasize a proactive and continuous approach to risk management. By identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities before deployment and establishing mitigation strategies, organizations can significantly reduce their exposure. This also supports the principle of security by design, ensuring that security considerations are embedded from the outset. Furthermore, maintaining detailed documentation of the risk assessment process, identified risks, and mitigation plans is crucial for demonstrating compliance with internal policies and external regulations, and for facilitating audits. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to conduct a perfunctory risk assessment only after a security incident has occurred. This reactive stance is a clear failure of due diligence and regulatory compliance. It demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management, which is often a requirement under various data protection and cybersecurity frameworks. Such an approach not only fails to prevent incidents, but also exacerbates the consequences when they do occur, as the organization will be seen as having neglected its responsibilities. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor-provided security certifications, without conducting an independent assessment of the specific implementation and configuration within the organization's environment. While vendor certifications are valuable, they do not account for the unique risks introduced by how a service is deployed, integrated, and managed by the customer. This can lead to a false sense of security and a failure to identify critical risks specific to the organization's operational context, potentially violating compliance obligations that require a thorough understanding of one's own risk posture. A third incorrect approach is to defer risk assessment to the operations team only after the service has been fully developed and deployed. This creates a bottleneck and increases the likelihood of overlooking design-level risks that are more effectively addressed during the design and development phases. It also shifts the burden of risk mitigation to a team that may not have the context or authority to implement fundamental changes, leading to inefficient and costly remediation efforts. This approach fails to embed risk management into the entire lifecycle, a key tenet of modern IT governance and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach that prioritizes proactive identification and mitigation of threats throughout the cloud service lifecycle. This involves establishing clear policies and procedures for risk assessment, ensuring that it is conducted by qualified personnel, and that findings are documented and acted upon. When faced with pressure to expedite deployment, professionals must advocate for the necessary time and resources to conduct thorough risk assessments, framing it not as a delay, but as an essential step in preventing future costly incidents and ensuring compliance. The decision-making process should involve understanding the organization's risk appetite, relevant regulatory requirements, and the potential impact of identified risks. Question 11. The analysis reveals that a new cloud management and automation solution is being implemented to streamline IT operations and enhance resource provisioning. During the initial risk assessment phase, several potential security concerns have been identified regarding data confidentiality and integrity within the automated workflows. Which of the following approaches best addresses these concerns within the context of a robust risk management framework for cloud environments? Option A. Rely solely on the vendor's security documentation and assume that all identified risks are adequately addressed by their default configurations. Option B. Focus the risk assessment on performance metrics and cost savings, deferring detailed security risk analysis to a later operational phase. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then develops a prioritized plan for mitigation and ongoing monitoring. Option D. Prioritize the implementation of automated security controls based on the perceived likelihood of a breach without a formal impact analysis. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the implementation of automated security controls based on the perceived likelihood of a breach without a formal impact analysis. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a cloud management and automation platform is being deployed in an environment with sensitive data. The challenge lies in ensuring that the risk assessment process is comprehensive and aligns with the principles of secure cloud adoption, specifically within the context of the VMware Certified Professional 6 Cloud Management and Automation, 2V0-631. Exams implied regulatory environment, which focuses on best practices for cloud security and compliance. The correct approach involves a systematic identification of potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the cloud platform's configuration, data handling, and access controls. This includes evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks, and then prioritizing mitigation strategies based on their effectiveness and feasibility. This aligns with industry best practices for risk management, emphasizing a proactive and layered security posture. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the technical implementation of automation without a thorough understanding of the associated risks. For instance, assuming that automation inherently eliminates all security risks is a dangerous oversimplification. Another incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only considers obvious threats, neglecting more subtle or emerging risks, such as supply chain vulnerabilities or insider threats. Failing to document the risk assessment process and the chosen mitigation strategies would also be a significant failure, hindering accountability and future audits. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the business objectives and the sensitivity of the data being managed. This should be followed by a detailed inventory of the cloud environment and its components. A comprehensive risk assessment should then be performed, considering technical, operational, and compliance aspects. Mitigation strategies should be developed, implemented, and continuously monitored. Regular reviews and updates to the risk assessment are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the cloud environment. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a third-party component utilized by VMware vRealize Automation, VRA 7X. A patch is available, but its deployment requires a restart of the VRA services, which could impact ongoing operations. There is no pre-existing, documented rollback procedure for this specific patch. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Roll back the VRA environment to the previous stable version and postpone addressing the vulnerability until the next scheduled major upgrade. Option B. Immediately deploy the patch across all production VRA environments to mitigate the security risk as quickly as possible. Option C. Delay the application of the patch indefinitely, awaiting a future major VRA release that may include the fix. Option D. Deploy the patch to a non-production environment for thorough testing. Develop a detailed rollback plan, and then proceed with a phased deployment to production, communicating progress to stakeholders. The correct answer is D. Deploy the patch to a non-production environment for thorough testing, develop a detailed rollback plan, and then proceed with a phased deployment to production, communicating progress to stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, where a critical security vulnerability is identified in a widely used third-party component within the VMware vRealize Automation (VRA) environment. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to mitigate risk with the operational impact of implementing a fix, especially when the fix involves a significant change to a core component. The pressure to restore service quickly, coupled with potential resistance from stakeholders due to perceived disruption, necessitates a structured and defensible decision-making process. The absence of a clear, predefined rollback plan for this specific update adds further complexity, highlighting the importance of proactive risk management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased, controlled deployment of the security patch, coupled with comprehensive testing and a documented rollback strategy. This aligns with best practices in IT service management and cloud operations, emphasizing risk mitigation and service continuity. Specifically, it reflects the principles of change management, which mandate thorough impact assessment, testing in a non-production environment, and a clear plan for reverting changes if issues arise. This approach minimizes the risk of widespread service disruption while ensuring the security vulnerability is addressed. The emphasis on communication with stakeholders throughout the process is also crucial for managing expectations and ensuring buy-in. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the patch immediately across all production environments without prior testing or a rollback plan is a high-risk strategy. This approach disregards fundamental change management principles and significantly increases the likelihood of introducing new, unforeseen issues that could lead to extended downtime and data loss. It fails to adequately assess the potential impact on the operational environment and violates the principle of least privilege by potentially exposing the system to further vulnerabilities during an untested update. Rolling back to the previous version of VRA without attempting to apply the security patch is also an unacceptable approach. While it might seem like a way to avoid immediate risk from the patch, it leaves the environment vulnerable to the identified security exploit. This failure to address a known critical vulnerability constitutes a significant security lapse and a breach of professional responsibility to maintain a secure operating environment. It prioritizes short-term operational stability over long-term security posture. Delaying the patch indefinitely until a future major upgrade cycle is also professionally unsound. Critical security vulnerabilities require timely remediation. Postponing the fix indefinitely, especially without a compelling and documented business justification that outweighs the immediate security risk, exposes the organization to significant potential damage. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of proactive security and risk management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment. This involves understanding the nature and severity of the vulnerability, the potential impact of exploitation, and the risks associated with applying the patch. The next step is to evaluate potential remediation strategies, considering their effectiveness, feasibility, and associated risks. This includes assessing the impact on operations, the availability of testing environments, and the existence of rollback procedures. Communication and stakeholder engagement are critical throughout the process to ensure alignment and manage expectations. Finally, a decision should be made based on the strategy that offers the best balance of security, operational stability, and business continuity, with a clear plan for implementation and monitoring. Question 13. The evaluation methodology shows that a financial services organization is implementing VMware Area Automation to automate the provisioning of virtual machines for new application deployments. The organization operates under strict data residency and customer data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best ensures that all provisioned virtual machines and their associated configurations adhere to these regulatory requirements from the outset? Option A. Assuming that the underlying vSphere infrastructure's compliance with data residency regulations automatically extends to all virtual machines provisioned through Area Automation. Option B. Disabling automated compliance checks within Area Automation to expedite the deployment process for development teams. Option C. Implementing custom blueprints in Area Automation that include predefined, compliant configurations and leveraging Area Automation's policy engine to enforce data residency and security standards during the approval and provisioning stages. Option D. Relying on the IT security team to perform manual audits of all provisioned virtual machines weekly to identify and rectify any compliance deviations. The correct answer is C. Implementing custom blueprints in Area Automation that include predefined, compliant configurations and leveraging Area Automation's policy engine to enforce data residency and security standards during the approval and provisioning stages. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical need for understanding how regulatory compliance intersects with cloud automation practices, specifically within the context of VMware vRealize Automation, now Area Automation. The challenge lies in ensuring that automated provisioning and management processes adhere to industry-specific regulations and internal governance policies without hindering operational efficiency. Professionals must navigate the complexities of maintaining audit trails, enforcing access controls, and ensuring data privacy within a dynamic, software-defined environment. The correct approach involves leveraging the policy-driven capabilities of Area Automation to embed compliance checks directly into the service catalog and lifecycle management workflows. This proactive integration ensures that deployments automatically conform to predefined regulatory standards, such as data residency requirements or security hardening benchmarks, before resources are provisioned. This represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principle of compliance by design, minimizing the risk of non-compliance and the associated remediation costs and reputational damage. It also provides an auditable record of compliance at the point of deployment. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual post-provisioning audits. This method is reactive and prone to human error, failing to prevent non-compliant deployments from occurring in the first place. It creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure by not implementing adequate controls to safeguard sensitive data or meet operational mandates, potentially leading to breaches and penalties. Another incorrect approach is to disable or bypass automated compliance checks within Area Automation to speed up provisioning. This represents a direct violation of regulatory requirements and ethical responsibilities. It prioritizes speed over security and compliance, creating a high-risk environment where unauthorized or insecure configurations can be deployed, leading to severe compliance failures and potential legal ramifications. Finally, an incorrect approach is to assume that the underlying infrastructure's compliance automatically extends to the automated cloud services. While infrastructure compliance is foundational, cloud automation introduces new layers of configuration and access that must be independently managed and validated against regulations. Failing to do so overlooks the specific risks associated with self-service provisioning and dynamic resource allocation, leading to a gap in regulatory oversight. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization, and then mapping those requirements to the capabilities of their cloud automation platform. This involves a continuous cycle of assessment, implementation, monitoring, and refinement of automated compliance controls. Question 14. Examination of the data shows that a new automated workflow has been developed to provision virtual machines in the VMware vCloud Suite environment. This workflow utilizes custom scripts and templates to configure operating systems, install necessary software, and apply initial security hardening. What is the most effective approach to assess the risks associated with this new automation workflow? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the automation, workflow scripts, templates, and access controls to identify potential vulnerabilities and ensure adherence to security best practices and organizational policies. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the security configurations of the individual virtual machines after they have been provisioned by the automation. Option C. Delegate the entire risk assessment responsibility to the security operations team, without providing them with detailed information about the automation workflow's design and intended functionality. Option D. Rely on the default security settings provided by the automation tool without further validation, assuming they meet all necessary compliance requirements. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the automation, workflow scripts, templates, and access controls to identify potential vulnerabilities and ensure adherence to security best practices and organizational policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and agility with robust security and compliance requirements. The professional is tasked with assessing risks associated with a new automation workflow designed to provision virtual machines. The challenge lies in identifying potential vulnerabilities introduced by the automation itself, rather than just the deployed VMs. This requires a proactive approach to risk management, ensuring that the automation process doesn't inadvertently create security gaps or compliance violations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the automation workflow's design, configuration, and intended operational procedures. This includes scrutinizing the scripts, templates, and access controls used by the automation engine. The justification for this approach lies in its alignment with best practices for secure cloud operations and the principles of least privilege and defense in depth. By thoroughly examining the automation's inherent risks, potential vulnerabilities can be identified and mitigated before they impact the production environment. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the integrity and security of the cloud infrastructure and adhering to the implicit requirements of responsible IT governance, which are foundational to any regulatory framework governing IT operations. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the security posture of the individual virtual machines after they are provisioned. This reactive method fails to address the risks inherent in the provisioning process itself. For example, if the automation workflow uses overly permissive credentials or insecurely stores sensitive configuration data, these vulnerabilities would persist across all provisioned VMs, creating a systemic risk. This oversight would represent a failure in due diligence and a disregard for the principle of securing the entire IT lifecycle, not just the endpoint. Another incorrect approach is to assume that the automation tool's default security settings are sufficient. Automation tools, while powerful, often require customization to meet specific organizational security policies and regulatory mandates. Relying on defaults without validation can lead to the adoption of insecure configurations, exposing the environment to unnecessary risks. This demonstrates a lack of critical evaluation and a failure to implement appropriate controls, which could have regulatory implications if specific security standards are mandated. Finally, deferring the risk assessment entirely to the security operations team, without providing them with the context of the automation workflow's design and intended function, is also an inadequate approach. While collaboration is essential, the team responsible for developing and implementing the automation must have a foundational understanding of the risks associated with their work. This shared responsibility ensures that security is embedded into the automation design from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured risk assessment methodology that begins with identifying the assets and processes being automated, followed by identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the automation workflow. Controls should then be identified and implemented to mitigate these risks, with a plan for ongoing monitoring and review. This iterative process ensures that the automation remains secure and compliant throughout its lifecycle. Question 15. The performance metrics show a consistent upward trend in resource utilization and a slight increase in latency for critical applications following the recent deployment of a new automated workflow for provisioning virtual machines. What is the most appropriate next step to ensure continued operational stability and compliance? Option A. Immediately roll back the new automated workflow to revert to the previous provisioning method and investigate the performance issues in a separate, isolated environment. Option B. Monitor the performance metrics for an additional week to observe if the trends stabilize or worsen before taking any corrective action. Option C. Proceed with deploying additional automated workflows to leverage the perceived efficiency gains, assuming the current performance changes are temporary anomalies. Option D. Initiate a detailed impact assessment to analyze the root cause of the performance changes, evaluate potential risks to service levels, and develop mitigation strategies before further automation is deployed. The correct answer is D. Initiate a detailed impact assessment to analyze the root cause of the performance changes, evaluate potential risks to service levels, and develop mitigation strategies before further automation is deployed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a proactive and strategic approach to managing the impact of a significant change within a cloud management and automation environment. The challenge lies in anticipating potential disruptions and ensuring that the implemented changes align with established operational policies and performance benchmarks, thereby maintaining service integrity and compliance. Careful judgment is required to balance the benefits of the new automation with the risks of unforeseen consequences. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough impact assessment before deployment. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance and change management, which mandate understanding the potential effects of any modification on system performance, security, and user experience. By conducting a comprehensive assessment, including performance baseline analysis, dependency mapping, and risk evaluation, the team can identify potential issues and develop mitigation strategies. This proactive stance ensures that the automation is implemented in a controlled manner, minimizing disruption and adhering to the established service level agreements, SLAs, and operational standards, which are implicitly governed by the need for reliable and efficient service delivery as expected by the organization and its stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate benefits of increased efficiency without considering the broader implications, fails to uphold professional responsibility. This oversight can lead to unintended consequences such as performance degradation, security vulnerabilities, or operational instability, which could violate organizational policies and potentially regulatory requirements related to data integrity and service availability. Another incorrect approach that delays the impact assessment until after deployment is ethically unsound and professionally negligent. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of significant service disruption, reputational damage, and potential noncompliance with internal controls and external regulations. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the principles of robust change management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the change being proposed and its intended outcomes. This should be followed by a systematic process of identifying potential impacts across all relevant domains: performance, security, operations, user experience. The next step involves evaluating the severity and likelihood of these impacts and developing appropriate mitigation or contingency plans. Finally, the decision to proceed with the change should be based on a comprehensive risk-benefit analysis, ensuring that the potential benefits outweigh the identified risks and that all mitigation strategies are in place. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, responsible, and aligned with best practices in cloud management and automation. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that automated provisioning workflows within the VMware cloud environment may not consistently enforce data residency and encryption standards as mandated by internal security policies and relevant industry regulations. What is the most effective approach to remediate this governance gap while maintaining the benefits of automation? Option A. Integrate policy as code definitions directly into the VMware area automation blueprints and workflows to enforce data residency and encryption requirements during resource provisioning. Option B. Conduct manual, post-provisioning audits of all deployed resources to verify compliance with data residency and encryption standards. Option C. Implement a broad, manual approval process for all automated deployments to ensure adherence to data residency and encryption policies. Option D. Disable automated provisioning for any resources that handle sensitive data until manual compliance checks can be performed. The correct answer is A. Integrate policy as code definitions directly into the VMware area automation, blueprints, and workflows to enforce data residency and encryption requirements during resource provisioning. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The governance review has identified a potential gap where automated workflows might inadvertently bypass established security controls or fail to adhere to specific regulatory mandates. The professional challenge lies in determining the most effective and compliant method to address this gap without stifling the agility that cloud automation is designed to provide. This requires a deep understanding of the VMware vRealize automation, now area automation, platform's capabilities, its integration points with security and compliance tools, and the underlying regulatory framework governing the organization's operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the policy-driven automation capabilities inherent in VMware area automation. This means defining and enforcing security and compliance policies directly within the automation workflows. For instance, using vRealize Orchestrator, vRO, or area automation's built-in policy engine to embed checks for encryption standards, access control configurations, or data residency requirements before resources are provisioned or modified. This approach aligns with best practices by making security and compliance an integral part of the automation lifecycle, rather than an afterthought. It ensures that every automated action adheres to the defined governance framework, thereby reducing the risk of noncompliance and security breaches. This proactive integration is crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual post-provisioning audits. This method is reactive and inefficient. It fails to address the root cause of the governance gap, which is the potential for automated workflows to bypass controls. Manual audits are prone to human error, are time-consuming, and do not prevent non-compliant deployments from occurring in the first place. This approach represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in ensuring ongoing compliance and security. Another incorrect approach would be to disable automation for sensitive resources. While this might seem like a quick fix, it undermines the core benefits of cloud automation, leading to increased operational overhead, slower deployment times, and potential inconsistencies. It also creates a bifurcated environment where some resources are automated and others are not, increasing complexity and the risk of errors in managing the overall infrastructure. This approach fails to address the governance gap constructively and instead creates new operational challenges. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket policy that restricts all automated deployments without proper analysis. This is overly restrictive and can hinder innovation and business agility. It fails to differentiate between high-risk and low-risk operations and does not leverage the platform's capabilities to enforce granular policies. This approach is a failure in professional judgment, as it prioritizes a simplistic solution over a nuanced and effective one that balances security with operational efficiency. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first thoroughly understanding the specific governance requirements and the existing automated workflows. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the precise points within the automation lifecycle where governance controls are being bypassed or could be bypassed. 2. Evaluating the capabilities of VMware area automation and its integrated components, like vRO, area operations, area cost, to enforce these controls programmatically. 3. Designing and implementing policy as code or workflow-based controls that are embedded within the automation. 4. Testing these controls rigorously to ensure they function as intended and do not introduce unintended consequences. 5. Establishing a continuous monitoring and auditing process to verify ongoing compliance and adapt policies as requirements evolve. This systematic approach ensures that security and compliance are integrated into the fabric of cloud automation, fostering a secure, efficient, and compliant cloud environment. Question 17. Market research demonstrates that a new, highly advanced cloud management automation platform promises significant operational efficiencies and cost savings. Your organization is eager to adopt this platform to streamline its virtual infrastructure and accelerate service delivery. However, platform's vendor has provided limited documentation regarding its adherence to specific data protection and operational governance standards relevant to the VMware Certified Professional 6 Cloud Management and Automation Certifications jurisdiction. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Implement the new platform with minimal configuration changes, focusing only on achieving the advertised operational efficiencies, and address any potential compliance issues only if they are flagged during an audit. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the new platform, scrutinizing its security features, data handling capabilities, and audit trails against the known regulatory framework for cloud management and automation, and seek independent verification of compliance claims before proceeding with adoption. Option C. Immediately deploy the new platform to capitalize on its advertised efficiencies, assuming that its advanced nature implies inherent compliance with relevant standards. Option D. Rely solely on the vendor's marketing materials and assurances regarding the platform's compliance, as they are the experts on their own product. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the new platform, scrutinizing its security features, data handling capabilities, and audit trails against the known regulatory framework for cloud management and automation, and seek independent verification of compliance claims before proceeding with adoption. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust, compliant, and secure cloud management automation. The organization is seeking to leverage new technologies to gain a competitive edge, but without a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape and the implications of the chosen automation tools, they risk significant compliance violations, data breaches, and operational instability. Careful judgment is required to balance speed with diligence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based evaluation of the chosen automation solution against the established regulatory framework relevant to cloud management and automation. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the VMware Certified Professional 6 Cloud Management and Automation Certifications jurisdiction, which implies adherence to industry best practices and potentially specific data protection and operational standards. By conducting a thorough assessment of the automation tool's capabilities, security features, and integration points, the organization ensures that its implementation aligns with compliance mandates and minimizes potential vulnerabilities. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining trust, avoiding penalties, and ensuring the long-term viability of the automated cloud environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived technical superiority of a new automation tool without considering its compliance implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for regulatory requirements, potentially leading to violations of data privacy laws, security standards, or operational governance. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing the automation tool without adequate testing or validation of its security controls, exposes the organization to significant risks of unauthorized access, data leakage, and service disruption. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold professional responsibility for secure system deployment. A third incorrect approach, which relies on anecdotal evidence or vendor claims without independent verification of compliance features, is also professionally unsound. This can lead to a false sense of security and ultimately result in non-compliance when audited or tested. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying all relevant regulatory requirements and industry standards applicable to cloud management and automation. Next, evaluate potential automation solutions against these requirements, focusing on their security, data handling, auditability, and integration capabilities. Prioritize solutions that demonstrate a clear commitment to compliance and offer robust mechanisms for enforcing policies. Finally, implement a continuous monitoring and auditing process to ensure ongoing adherence to regulations and to adapt to evolving compliance landscapes. Question 18. Performance analysis shows that the automated provisioning of virtual machines and associated infrastructure components using VMware area automation is significantly faster than manual processes. But there has been an increase in security alerts related to misconfigurations and unauthorized access attempts on newly deployed resources. The organization operates under strict data privacy regulations that mandate secure configurations and auditable provisioning processes, which approach best balances the need for rapid provisioning with robust security and compliance. Option A. Implement comprehensive blueprint and workflow approval policies within area automation, coupled with integration of automated security scanning tool to validate configurations against compliance baselines before provisioning is finalized. Option B. Rely on manual security reviews after each deployment to ensure compliance, accepting the inherent delays this introduces to the provisioning process. Option C. Focus security efforts exclusively on the network perimeter, assuming that all resources provisioned within the trusted area automation environment are inherently secure. Option D. Disable all approval workflows in area automation to maximize provisioning speed and rely solely on post-deployment security audits to identify and remediate issues. The correct answer is A. Implement comprehensive blueprint and workflow approval policies within area automation, coupled with integration of automated security scanning tools to validate configurations against compliance baselines before provisioning is finalized. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and resource provisioning with the imperative to maintain security and compliance. The core tension lies between the agility promised by automation and the inherent risks of misconfiguration or unauthorized access when not properly governed. The professional challenge is to implement automation that is both efficient and secure, adhering to established security policies and regulatory requirements without stifling innovation. This requires a deep understanding of the VMware vRealize automation, now area automation, platform's capabilities, its integration points with security tools, and the underlying compliance frameworks relevant to the organization's operational environment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the built-in policy enforcement mechanisms within area automation, specifically focusing on blueprint and workflow approvals, and integrating with external security scanning tools. This aligns with best practices for secure cloud automation by embedding security checks early in the provisioning lifecycle. Blueprint approvals ensure that only validated and secure templates are used for deployment, preventing the introduction of vulnerable configurations. Workflow approvals add a layer of human oversight for critical or sensitive deployments, ensuring adherence to organizational policies. Integrating with security scanning tools, such as vulnerability scanners or configuration compliance checkers, provides automated validation against predefined security baselines before resources are provisioned. This proactive, policy-driven approach minimizes the attack surface and ensures that deployments meet compliance standards, thereby reducing the risk of security breaches and regulatory noncompliance. This method directly addresses the need for both speed and security by automating security checks within the provisioning workflow. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely rely on post-deployment security scans without any pre-deployment checks. This is a reactive rather than proactive security posture. While post-deployment scans can identify issues, they do so after resources have already been provisioned and potentially exposed. This delay in detection increases the window of vulnerability and can lead to significant remediation efforts, impacting service availability and potentially violating compliance mandates that require continuous security monitoring and adherence to baselines from the moment of deployment. Another incorrect approach is to disable all approval workflows to expedite provisioning. While this might seem to increase speed, it bypasses critical governance and security checkpoints. Without approvals, there is a higher risk of unauthorized deployments, misconfigurations, or the use of non-compliant resources. This directly undermines the organization's security policies and can lead to significant compliance violations, especially in regulated industries where audit trails and explicit authorization for resource deployment are mandatory. A third incorrect approach is to implement security policies only at the network perimeter, assuming that internal cloud resources are inherently secure. This is a flawed security model that ignores the internal threat landscape and the potential for misconfigurations within the cloud environment itself. Area automation's capabilities extend to securing the resources being provisioned, and neglecting this aspect leaves the environment vulnerable to insider threats or accidental misconfigurations that can be exploited. Relying solely on perimeter security is insufficient for a comprehensive cloud security strategy. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a defense-in-depth strategy for cloud automation. This involves integrating security and compliance checks at multiple stages of the provisioning lifecycle, from blueprint design to deployment and ongoing management. The decision-making process should prioritize automation that enforces policies, provides auditable trails, and minimizes manual intervention for routine tasks, while retaining human oversight for critical decisions. Regularly reviewing and updating security policies and automation workflows to align with evolving threats and regulatory requirements is also paramount. The goal is to create a secure, compliant, and efficient cloud environment that supports business objectives without introducing undue risk. Question 19. Implementation of a new automated workflow for provisioning virtual machines requires temporary elevated privileges for a junior administrator to configure specific network security groups. The current security policy mandates a formal review and approval process for any elevated access, which can take several business days. The junior administrator is eager to complete the task before a critical deadline. What is the most professional course of action? Option A. Provide the junior administrator with a pre-configured script that automates the security group configuration without requiring elevated privileges. Option B. Grant the junior administrator the necessary elevated privileges immediately, with a verbal instruction to revert them once the task is complete to meet the deadline. Option C. Escalate the urgency of the request to the security team, explaining the deadline and the business impact, and request expedited review and approval for the temporary elevated privileges. Option D. Inform the junior administrator that the deadline cannot be met due to policy constraints and suggest they wait for the formal approval process to conclude. The correct answer is B. Grant the junior administrator the necessary elevated privileges immediately, with a verbal instruction to revert them once the task is complete to meet the deadline. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IT environments, particularly within cloud management and automation. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for a functional solution with the long-term implications of security and compliance. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise established protocols. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established security policies and the principle of least privilege. By engaging the security team and following the documented process for granting elevated access, the administrator upholds the organization's security posture and regulatory compliance. This demonstrates professional integrity and a commitment to responsible system management, ensuring that access is granted only when necessary and with appropriate oversight, aligning with best practices for secure cloud operations and data protection. An incorrect approach that bypasses security protocols, even with good intentions, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It undermines the established security framework, potentially creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited. This action violates the principle of accountability and could lead to unauthorized access or data breaches, which have severe compliance implications, including potential fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, that of delaying the request indefinitely without communication, fails to address the business need and demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and communication, which are essential professional skills. It also fails to uphold the responsibility to facilitate necessary operations within secure boundaries. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the request and its implications. They must then consult relevant policies and procedures, engage appropriate stakeholders, like security or compliance teams, and communicate transparently about timelines and requirements. If a policy seems to hinder a legitimate business need, the professional should advocate for a review of the policy through the proper channels, rather than circumventing it. Question 20. Strategic planning requires a robust approach to incident response when automated cloud deployments fail. A critical business service, managed and deployed via vRealize automation, has become unavailable. The immediate pressure is to restore service as quickly as possible, What is the most professional and effective course of action to address this outage? Option A. Focus investigation efforts solely on external dependencies and network infrastructure, assuming the vRealize automation deployment itself is functioning correctly. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive root cause analysis by engaging the vRealize automation team to examine deployment logs, configuration changes, and integration points within the automation platform to identify the underlying issue before implementing a permanent fix. Option C. Manually reconfigure the impacted components directly on the infrastructure, bypassing the vRealize automation workflow to bring the service back online as swiftly as possible. Option D. Immediately revert the affected service to its last known stable configuration without investigating the specific cause of the failure, prioritizing immediate service restoration above all else. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive root cause analysis by engaging the vRealize automation team to examine deployment logs, configuration changes, and integration points within the automation platform to identify the underlying issue before implementing a permanent fix. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud management and automation where a critical service outage impacts business operations. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to rushed decisions, potentially bypassing established change management and security protocols. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of restoration with the need to maintain compliance, security, and long-term system stability. The organization's reliance on the automated deployment pipeline, coupled with the potential for cascading failures if the root cause is not properly identified and addressed, amplifies the professional difficulty. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a systematic and documented investigation. This aligns with best practices in IT service management (ITSM) and cloud governance, which emphasize root cause analysis (RCA) and controlled remediation. By engaging the automation team to analyze logs and configuration changes within the vRealize automation (VRA) environment, the focus is on understanding the *Y* behind the failure. This methodical approach ensures that the fix addresses the underlying issue, not just the symptom, thereby preventing recurrence. It also supports auditability and compliance by creating a traceable record of the incident and resolution. This adheres to the principles of maintaining a secure and reliable cloud infrastructure, which is a core tenet of cloud management and automation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reverting to a previous known good state without understanding the cause. While this might restore service, it fails to identify and fix the root cause, leaving the system vulnerable to similar issues. This bypasses the RCA process, which is crucial for continuous improvement and preventing future outages. It also risks introducing new problems if the rollback process is not perfectly executed or if the original issue was a latent configuration drift that the rollback doesn't fully address. Another incorrect approach is to manually reconfigure the affected components outside of the VRA workflow. This creates configuration drift, making the environment difficult to manage and automate consistently. It undermines the very purpose of vRealize automation, which is to provide a standardized and repeatable deployment and management framework. This manual intervention also bypasses change control and audit trails, posing significant security and compliance risks. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on external factors without investigating the VRA deployment itself. While external dependencies can cause issues, the prompt specifically points to the VRA deployment as the potential source. Neglecting to thoroughly examine the automation platform means missing potential misconfigurations, script errors, or integration issues within VRA that are directly responsible for the service failure. This reactive approach, without a deep dive into the automation layer, is inefficient and unlikely to provide a lasting solution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. This typically involves 1. Incident identification and logging. 2. Initial triage and prioritization. 3. Investigation and diagnosis including RCA. 4. Resolution and recovery. 5. Post-incident review and follow-up. In this scenario, the professional decision-making process should involve engaging the relevant subject matter experts, SME in this case, the vRealize automation team to perform a thorough RCA. Documentation of all steps taken, findings, and resolutions is paramount for accountability, compliance, and future reference. The goal is always to restore service while ensuring the integrity and security of the cloud environment.